Are you stuck at home in lockdown? Yeah, I know, we all are. Don't worry, we've got you covered because it's time once again for Live at Night with Pete Ferrero.
Don't you want to be like, I don't give a shit?
Send me your address. I'll be happy to send you a copy.
Oh, excellent! Yeah,
That's awesome. Okay, and so and I paid for it, so that's just lovely. No.
I'm on. Okay, what's that? I'm live at night.
Where whatever happens, happens. Now, along with his special guests, here's your host, Pete Ferrero.
Hey, I'm so excited to have the two geniuses that created Midnight Madness with me. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Yeah.
Good to be called a genius.
Yeah.
Great way to start.
Well, the thing is, you know, my sister and I watched this movie, and she's a wonderful person. So it's our connection. Is Midnight Madness is our connection. So I feel like it's funny. I posted on Facebook about this movie, and everybody starts commenting, and oh my God, I love that movie. There's this like thread on my Facebook page, which I'm like, I post pictures of my wife and dogs, and I don't get any. I post about Midnight Madness, and it's everyone's super excited to hear about this. So you guys definitely made something pretty awesome.
Thank you.
That's nice to hear.
So how do you guys even meet each other?
We were in middle school, and there was a mutual friend of ours named Herbert Gerson Rosenblum. Okay. And he knew David, and separately he knew me, and he realized that both of us drew cartoons of our teachers, making fun of our teachers. And he said, "You guys have to meet."
That's pretty awesome. What do you remember about it, David?
I remember all through junior high and high school passing notes to each other. We would create these elaborate comic strips of our alter egos, having fantasy adventures in school, and then starting to make movies together in the 8th grade.
So then eventually you guys both go to two different film schools. You don't go to the same one, right?
That's right. We got the benefit of both, actually, that way, because we were still partnering in our films. And
you remained friendly, I guess, through this whole time period?
No, we can't stand each other now. We're suing each other.
But back then, like, so how does it become like, hey, we're going to, make movies and you just come out of film school? What is the process like back then? Because it's so interesting. Today is so different than it was then, you know what I mean? But for you guys to decide that, hey, we're going to make some projects and try to get some money, is from what I understand is what you guys kind of did, right? Like that was, I don't know, that was a very popular way of handling things back then. That was a very adventurous, I guess, right? To take that leap.
No, it seemed normal. I mean, we were looking back on it. We were really ambitious and entrepreneurial. Yeah. And in high school, David and I had a photography business, and we would do like weddings and bar mitzvahs to fund filmmaking addiction. And later, we partnered up with two of our friends and formed a company. This was Steve Jacobson and Helen Spears. And the four of us formed a company, and we wanted to make films together, and we landed some commercial work. Mm-hmm. And all the profits to that went into producing our films.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. It was kind of exotic in those days to be making films, not like today. Everybody can put something on YouTube with their phone.
Right.
So, there are only 100 filmmakers in my class at USC. So I think we did it because we were able to make films instead of writing term papers.
Right.
And it was more fun.
That's way more fun and way more interesting. So how is it that Midnight Madness even comes to be?
Well, we made a film. It's the mid 70s, and every screening of student films that David and I go to are filled with depressing teenage angst, confusing movies that make us sad and suicidal. And we thought, we need to make a film that's going to show at these screenings and make everyone happy. Totally. Because we have very like old-fashioned commercial tastes. And so we made a movie, this big student film called Junior High School, which was a musical.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
We funded it with our commercial work, and we got an AFI grant to finish it. And it was designed, to like as our calling card in the business, but also like to make people happy at student film screenings. And we had this we had our last, I think we made the movie. We had $300 left over. We rented out the DGA theater to have our cast and crew screening. And we asked everyone who was coming, like, if you know anybody in the movie business, because we knew nobody, bring them. And so we had the screening, and a couple of days later, we get a phone call. This guy says, "Hi, I was at your movie, and I'm the production manager of animation at Disney Studios."
It happened to be my grandmother's friend, and the head of animation at Disney Studios' name was Donald Duck Wall. No joke.
That's pretty crazy. That's got to be made up, no?
No, it's true.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So anyway, so he says, could you guys drop a print by the studio? We'd like to show it here. And we were like, yeah, we had one print of the movie, and we, it was like before the phone hit the floor, the print was at the studio. And 2 weeks go by, was it like 2 weeks? And then we get a call from the head of the story department. And they have us come in, all four of us, and they sit us down in Walt's old office, which now belongs to Ron Miller. I mean, then now.
Yeah.
Was running the studio, and they said, we liked your movie, and we think you guys can reach an audience we're having trouble with, which is the teenage audience. So what do you say we give you offices and you come up with movies for us?
We were 22 years old, just 1 year out of film school. And it was really a dream come true. So we're sitting in the offices that were formerly occupied by the Sherman Brothers, who wrote all the songs for Disney movies. And suddenly we realized, well, we need to come up with some ideas. And I think it was our second day there, we remembered having read a newspaper article about a guy in Northern California who put on these underground treasure hunts for his college buddies. It was like a, I don't know, 5th page, bottom of the newspaper, little blurb. And then that was the seed. And we thought, well, that could be our it's a mad world for young audiences.
Yeah. So what is that like when you go and pitch that now? Now you have to pitch this to Disney, right? And by the way, this is Disney. So, they're not known. I don't know what they've done. I know they have Disney Plus now, but back in the day, they weren't Plus.
It was a very small studio then, and they kind of were in a, Walt had died 10 years before, and I think their big movie that year was, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo. They were, they were kind of stuck in the past, and they didn't know how to move into the future. And, they were it was this like miraculous little crack in the door that we slipped through to get into the business, where they were, a little desperate and thought like, we'll bring in these young kids. It's worked, for other studios, and see what happens.
So pitching, we had a lot of guts. I mean, at that age, I probably more guts than I feel like I would have now. Now I'd think everything over so much, but the four of us, Michael's an artist, and he drew up some kind of prototype movie posters we pitched 4 ideas. And Midnight Madness was not the title then, but that was one of them. And that was one of the ideas. They said, go ahead and develop it. And it was a step deal where Michael and I had to start out by writing an outline and a treatment, and they kept greenlighting us into screenplays. And suddenly we realized, like, this is really going to happen.
Right. Were you, as each step happened, were you like, at some point they're going to stop us here?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was weird. It was a combination. We knew nothing. We were film students,
right?
Running around in the studio, and I think part of us was in shock that it was happening at all, and another part of us was thinking like, well, this is the way we thought it would go when we went to film school. This is how it works.
The next step,
not knowing that it never works that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. Obviously, now it's so hard to get anywhere. Like, this is like literally a dream come true as it's happening. Exactly how you imagined it's happening now. That's crazy. So what were some of how do you guys write together anyway? Do you guys sit together? Or do you guys write separately when you're writing Midnight Madness? How did that happen?
We went out to lunch a lot.
Okay.
And we would explore locations that we were thinking about for the film. But we wrote back in those days. I think we wrote everything together.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally, like it, we would sit there at our IBM Selectric typewriters and just hammer it out. Of course, when you start out, you know the general shape of the story, and it was a complex type of a script to write with all the locations and the clues. So we would just kind of do research and come up with, wouldn't it be fun to have a scene here and have one here? And it wasn't until after we would kind of figure out what all those scenes might be that we then started to figure out what the clues would be and how they would lead from one to another.
I mean, and you had so many characters, you know what I mean? It was a huge ensemble cast. And I think one of the questions I said is like, I'm totally blown away that like no character, including the ones that are in the apartment, nobody really gets lost in the shuffle in that. How did you even do that? I mean, I don't even know if you consciously thought that through.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, mostly my memory of it was we just tried to crack each other up.
Right. Okay.
They were larger than life characters.
He was a much better typist.
Yeah, they were, big, broad stroke characters, and some of them were based on people we knew. Some of them were based on a screenplay, the only other screenplay we had ever written about a year earlier, which was about kids at a summer camp. And we took those same characters of 13-year-olds and then turned them into college students, which is probably why they were so mature. But
that makes sense.
We borrowed from ourselves.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I mean, because you have this project, you might as well throw everything into the fire, right?
Yeah.
And then so now you guys have done a lot of other projects since then, but when you look back on this ensemble project, at 22 years old, was that a huge thing to take on, to do a project of that nature with all of those characters?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it was lucky that there were two of us. Yeah. Because as far as the directing went, we would prepare everything together, and having written it together, we knew it like the backs of our hands, but we divided the scenes up, and one of us would take charge of different scenes. We actually divided the teams up. We kind of drew straws of who would direct which teams. And so that way, I mean, that helped spread the workload.
Totally. Do you guys, either of you, remember writing anything specifically in the movie, like any specific lines?
I remember stealing two lines. One was, if you remember, well, you know the film well, and maybe your listeners do, when Blaylock dives into the beer and gets drunk right before he throws up. He says, "This is the happiest day of my life." My brother had said that at age 13 when he got drunk the first time.
I love that.
And there's one other line. I don't know if you remember this, Michael, but my dad had once been on one of the sets of our short films, and I think it was an acquaintance of Michael who had come by on a motorcycle wearing Speedos. And I think my dad said, "That's a mean machine you got between your legs." And we gave that to Eddie Jason's character on his moped.
What about you, Michael? Do you remember writing any specific lines?
No, I think I remember we just could not stop laughing when Faggot Beefy entered our consciousness.
Right. I was going to build to that, but tell me, how does that is the big one, I think, that everybody remembers so much from that movie. How does Faggot Beefy come to exist in your mind?
I don't know. I mean, how does any idea come to your mind?
Right.
Just, you know, it was like we had been building our, merging our senses of humors since we were 13.
Sure.
So for 10 years, we were, on the same wavelength. And I mean, really, our whole career is based on the fact that we just tried to amuse each other.
Yeah. But do you remember coming up with that together, the Faggot Beefy thing?
I have this, I mean, you're talking 40 years ago.
Sure, I got you.
But I remember us. I just remember us laughing. I mean, I think back, like I said, the main memory of us in that room. is like, I can't believe it. They were paying us, and all we did was sit there and make dopey jokes and like decide like, oh, that one goes in or that one doesn't, or try to top each other. And
I'm sure we were sitting at our little coffee table by the couch with little strip pieces of paper with those letters written on them, and just moving them around until something came up. I'm sure when that word came up, we both knew that was it.
Yeah, oh man, it's the moment. I don't know. There's a lot of the moments in that movie though, but that is. Now, how did you get that actor? What's his name? Brian Fisher, or did I make that up? Brian Fishman. Yeah, Brian Fishman.
Yeah, I mean
Brian Fishman.
Yeah,
played Barf.
Oh, yeah, he came to. He came in. Here's my biggest memory of the casting process was, we were dealing with sort of this old school Disney casting, but we thought, because we were so young and we had been given such a huge opportunity that we wanted to spread the wealth. So we had open casting one weekend at Disney Studios, and basically we put out everywhere we could. It's like, if you ever want to be in a movie, come audition for us. And like people lined up around the block, and we had this huge, cattle call casting session for, people who've never been in films. And we actually, I think there are a couple people from that who were in the movie. But Brian was a real actor. It's interesting. I ran into him, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and he's a very smart, very debonair guy.
A little bit opposite of Barf.
Like his character. Nothing like his character, and is a very active theater director right now. Or last when I saw him a few years ago.
And how did you guys, when you see Brian, are you like, that's Barf?
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think so.
His physique. When he walked in the room, I'm sure, and he had that voice.
Yeah,
he is.
I remember that a lot. Most of the actors came through casting agents and looking through 8x10s, and now it's all done online. But they would physically come in to read for us. And the one character, I think there's 3 characters that we specifically wrote for. One was Eddie Deason as the head nerd, Wesley, because we had seen I Want to Hold Your Hand, in which he was one of the
fantastic movie. Yeah,
just fell in love with him. So we wrote that for him. If he hadn't agreed to do it, I think we would have,
freaked out. Yeah, yeah.
And then the other was the 2 overweight twins on the red team.
Yeah.
That one of them had been in that student film junior high school for us.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then she told us she had an identical twin, and just the visual idea of the 2 of them, I think we wrote for them, and there were really no one else could have fit those roles.
Yeah, no, they seem to be written for, like you said, for those people. Like, I can't see someone else playing the twins.
I just had this memory of Barf, and that's we in the editing we always would cut to Barf like 1 second before his line. So there was always, we just lowered his IQ by 50 points because he cut to him and just keep sitting there before he'd speak.
That's great, man. How did you guys create the logo and the song? The logo's awesome. You know what I mean? It's got it's a classic 80s logo. And the song, David, are you a part of it? Your name's on it, right?
Yes, I co-wrote the song with my father, who is deceased, but was a songwriter himself. And we had to compete with other songwriters writing demos and playing them for the head of the studio for him to choose what would be the title song. And luckily, he actually chose ours. And it's a song, I think it's kind of an earworm from what I hear from people. And the only thing is that we both, my dad and I, hated disco music.
Right.
And so, we had to it had to be a disco beat in 1979, 1980, everything was.
Right.
So I remember having to fit it into that, but I do still feel it was a catchy song.
Oh, dude, it should have been top 40.
And the logo, Michael, I was probably the art department or...
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I remember seeing submissions of, of logos and the artwork, and it may have been designed by the guy who painted the poster.
Right. And he had done, what was the other big film he had done the poster for?
He did 200 Motels. He did, I can't remember.
Some other big youth comedy, I think.
Yeah.
And that did kind of set the tone for the logo.
Oh, totally. How about the DP that you worked with on the project? He had to be like a huge help in this whole process.
Oh, Frankie. Yeah. Well, Disney, we were so young. Disney surrounded us with as much gray hair as they possibly could.
Right.
And they wanted people to do what they're. So Frankie Phillips was, I think, 72 or 70
wow. Yeah.
when we made that movie. And he was the camera operator on Singing in the Rain.
Wow.
That was one of the credits that stuck in my mind. And he was fabulous, and he kept us honest, and he really supported us. And we had a shoot that went through a lot of nights.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. It
was physically grueling to make that movie. And I remember we got a letter from Frankie's wife begging us not to kill him.
He did. I think out of exhaustion, have to finally bow out of the film, and we finished it with another DP.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, we wore him out.
Talk to me about it's Midnight Madness, so you can't shoot in the day, right? You have to shoot at night. So tell me how that process went.
Well, all the exteriors, of course, are shot at night, and the worst thing was that we were shooting in the summer, so nights were short.
Right.
So you get about 8 hours of night sky, and and I remember the panic that would set in around 5 a.m. when we still have like a page to shoot, and you start to see that sun, those rays of the sun coming up in the east, so you start shooting towards the west.
Right.
And the way it worked was they kind of worked us into that night schedule, and then we were on that night schedule for like 6 weeks straight. So you would go to work at like 4 p.m. and have a breakfast burrito to start your day, and then drive out to the location and wait for it to get dark and then start shooting. I think we were young, and so we had the energy to do it. But we'd catch actors falling asleep all the time.
I could imagine. Yeah.
There's a lot of stage work too. We had, like Leon's apartment was a set.
Okay.
The hallway and the room with the Bonaventure is a set.
Oh, interesting. What about the school? Is the school a real school, or is the school a set? The school at the top of the movie.
That's the studio.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's Disney Studio. So we had some stuff that we could do in the day.
Cool.
But actually, it's interesting. The night schedule is why we ended up with Michael J. Fox. Because, if an actor is under 18, their hours are limited. So we needed someone who was 18 and looked 12.
Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. At the time it was Michael J. Fox, and the studio was very skeptical, and we did a photo shoot. We took him through hair and makeup and wardrobe to make him look as young as possible, and then we took stills with him posing with the biggest members of the cast, so he looked tiny. And we brought those stills to Ron Miller, the head of the studio, to say, "Look, we need this guy."
And so, which one of you found Michael J. Fox? How did you even discover him or see him?
Well, I think it was through the casting department at the studio. They said, well, there's this unknown actor from Canada. He's only done one thing in his life. And it turns out, he was, one of the best actors on the.
Brilliant. You just look at 2 years later, and he's in Back to the Future. It's and everything else that he did. So that's incredible. And he's great. By the way, he's sort of like the dramatic character in this. Of all the comedy and everyone's comedy except for pretty much Michael J. Fox. Yeah. Right.
Right, and then he ended up having the biggest comedy career after that.
Absolutely. So how many locations did you actually go to then, since the school, okay, so some of it's on a lot, but there are a lot of like infamous or very famous locations that appeared to be where you went.
Yeah, they were, all of the locations were real, except there were a couple of minor ones where I think there was a carnival scene that we created on an empty lot next to the studio. but the Los Angeles Airport, the Observatory, the Bonaventure Hotel, those are places that we visited while we were writing and research what could we do there. We take the tour and see what kind of gags we could do at each place, and we really had to go to them.
But did you shoot at Bonaventure then, or no?
Yes, except for, as Michael said, in the actual room.
The hotel room. Yeah,
the hotel room, that was a set, as was the hallway where they have the water fight.
Yeah.
But all the running around the hotel, we shot at the Bonaventure Hotel, I think, for about a week.
Interesting.
Of nights. I think we were still on the night schedule. We had it's hard to get off the night schedule once you're on it.
Sure.
And but I remember that we shot for a week and we had to finish. And the last day was a Friday, but it turned into Saturday morning. And it ended up being the most expensive shoot day in Disney history because every single character in the cast was there. Full crew.
Yeah.
And dozens of extras. My brother was an extra and he made like $500 in overtime and weekend pay. So it was a very expensive shoot.
What is that? There's a couple of those big scenes. There's that one, and then there's the one where they're running through the airport, which I feel like when you see that airport scene, you feel like, what in the world? You know what I mean? It feels like this is really happening. This is a real adventure, and this is, it really comes to life. What are those scenes like shooting for you guys? Are you both there, or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember at the airport. Actually, I remember almost every day just in a state of disbelief, thinking, I can't believe I'm actually doing this.
Right.
How did this happen? Making a Hollywood movie at the airport,
Right. But I mean, so it's really LAX. Is that where it is?
Really LAX, yeah. And I don't know if you can even get, access to the places we shot. And I remember Eddie Deason was not playing a character. He's playing himself.
Right.
And he, to amuse his fellow actors, he crawled in and put himself through the X-ray machine.
That's great. That's brilliant. You cannot do that now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was.
No, there's so much we did that you can't do now.
But it even looks like some of the scenes where they're coming into the airport, it looks like people are really outside of the airport, doing luggage and things like that. So it feels so authentic. But is that tough to manage, all those people in those various scenes, when you have the entire ensemble running in the hallway, or the entire ensemble in the one room at the hotel?
Yeah, there's a lot of smart people scheduling, but it's interesting. Just you remind me of I'm thinking about Bob Gossam now. Mm-hmm. So we had Bob Gossam was our production manager's first AD on our student films. We comfortable with him, but we couldn't get him the job as the AD on Midnight Madness. They gave us someone else. And after 3 days of shooting with this guy, we realized he's pushing us around, and he doesn't think we know what we're doing, and he wants to take over this movie.
Right.
And so we went to the studio and said, we got to get rid of this guy. And they said, well, who are we going to get at the last minute? And we said, Bob Gossam.
But so it was somebody that you knew. Yeah.
Yeah. And he came in and did a stellar job. And he was the one who organized getting everyone there and, worked with the location department and made all that stuff happen.
You have assistant directors cueing people in the background, and it's a whole, it's a work of art the way a film set works like that.
I mean, but you guys know from all the projects you've done since, getting 2 actors, can be challenging. 20 plus running in a hallway or whatever, that sounds like a lot. A lot.
It was. I think Michael directed that shot while I was probably sleeping on the couch in the
the Bonaventure shot. That was a good shot. Every cast member was in it.
Yeah, that was.
But it's actually interesting, shots like that are never as hard as you think.
Okay.
Oh my God, it's a big shot. We got to get super organized, and everyone does. Sometimes 2 people sitting at the table becomes the hardest thing to shoot.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, because there's so many moving parts and people, you would imagine that it's got to be the hardest. You know what I mean? But they're professional actors.
Everyone knows it's hard. They drill down on it, and
yeah. How did you guys get Stephen first?
Well, he was a big star from Animal House. He played.
Was that important for them? I remember I saw somewhere you were talking about Disney sort of wanted to create like an Animal House kind of thing. That's kind of why they went with this, right?
Yeah, he was probably the biggest star of all the, college student characters that came into the film. And I remember it came down to the wire trying to meet his price. He held out for the biggest amount of money. He actually, when you negotiate with actors, your directors don't get involved. It's the studio and the managers talking. But he called us in the midst of negotiations. It was at a standstill. And he called us. He said, "You know what? There aren't that many good fat actors in this town that can do this. So you better get me the money that I want." And he was right.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he's so good in it. Obviously. Yeah. That's funny though. Like you guys have no control over it. Did you guys go?
Totally forgot about that.
Did you guys then go on speak on his behalf? Like we need him, or?
Yes, I'm sure we did. I mean. Yeah. We would have. I don't even know if we had a second choice. It was no one
has to be
been as good. Yeah, and then Adam was David Naughton was also well known from not only the Dr. Pepper commercials, but he had a #1 song called "Making It" in 1978. So he was another one. But after those guys, I think that most of them were it was kind of their big breaks for most of the actors.
Sure. I mean, and some of them obviously have gone on to other big things.
Well, Andy Tennant, who played Melio on the Blue Team, became a giant A-list director for.
Yeah. And then Maggie Roswell went on to The Simpsons, right? So, and Dirk Blocker, right? I think he's on something now. The Brooklyn Nine. Well, I don't know what that. I haven't seen that, but I know. Yeah. So they all kind of started. What about Leon? The character of Leon becomes critical. Whoever is going to become Leon. How did you guys? Was there a lot of Leons, or was it always going to be Alan?
No, I think we had a few that we liked.
He came to that open call.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the guys that lined up with hundreds of people, and he was a symphony orchestra. He plays oboe, I think.
Okay.
Symphony orchestra, and he just did it on a lark, but he had a look that we loved. But I think you're right, Michael. There was a couple guys that was down to.
Yeah.
But now I'm sure there's no way you can see anyone else other than.
Right.
Yeah. And he went on.
I think there's a good version with Brad Pitt as.
Maybe in the reboot, right? Everything's getting rebooted. But he went on to do like game shows, right? So he is like totally like real life Leon. Didn't change.
That's right.
Also, there was a group of people in LA who decided to put on real Midnight Madness inspired treasure hunts.
About 5 years ago.
A long number of years, and they hunted down Alan,
right,
to get involved with him and be their like game leader.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Hey, what about like coming up with the different colors and the teams and all that stuff? How did you guys kind of organize all that? And then on that note too, like even the cars for the teams, how did you guys kind of develop each one of those things?
Well, I'm sorry. It was, color coding them just everything would help the audience. It was a shorthand to help the audience. And I think, we probably thought, well, yellow's kind of a neutral color for the good guys. And then the vehicles were really characters that fit the characters that they went with.
That's what I was just going to ask you about, creating Harold's van. What is, how did you do that?
I don't know. We just thought like, I don't know. I just remember us just like thinking around like what would be funny. And I can't remember if Brian Frischman gave us, when he showed up, we decided there should be a bubble on top, or we had the bubble before he showed up.
Vans were kind of in those days among teenagers and
totally
decking out your vans, and it also kind of had a sinister feel to it, and it just seemed like, just like Harold's character, it would be something that would be bigger and nastier than any other team would have. So
did you shoot most of this in 79 480, or did you shoot it in 80 480?
79. We shot the summer of 79.
Okay, so envisioning a computer in 1979, you know, I mean, I think you I said in the question, I think you guys invented Google, you know, like searches it and it comes up. The answer to the clue literally comes up.
And wasn't that...
Think about putting a computer in the car. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there were no car phones or computers.
You had a car phone?
The graphics in the computer screens were actually created on 35 millimeter film. There weren't even computer graphics then, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Or did we feed something into this? I can't remember. I mean, there were computers, but
there's computers in your life.
Harold's computer, because of his rich dad, could do things that we, the writers, wanted it to do, rather than what we actually did.
I think you guys need to call Google.
Yeah, where's our check?
Let me see. So, how did you come up with some of the clues and whatnot? I mean, you know, like at one point I was trying to figure them out, and then I was like, I can't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, just, you know, we just mostly worked backwards.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from the answer.
So you knew this was going to be the location that we wound up at. Let's come up with a pretty cool clue.
Yeah. What could lead us to the Piano Museum? Well, you know, if we want to have the observatory first, they could see the clue through a telescope, and it was kind of like a chess game.
Right.
I'm sure we kind of.
Oh,
it's okay. It's okay. It's Leon.
Yeah, it's Google.
It's Harold.
I heard about when it happened. Yeah. That's funny. This happens to me 3 times a day, by the way.
And it's a robocall, and I can't turn it off.
Maybe you better answer it.
There you go. Give up.
Yeah, the clues were. That was the challenge, and the fun. But it was about working backwards to create what's going to come next. And then I'm sure we would have things just right, like this is a great clue to lead to that, and then we'd realize, well, for another element of the story, you know, we can't have the airport yet. That has to come later because that's where Adam's brother Scott gets in trouble, and so we'd have to undo all the stuff we had come up with, what came before and after that. So it was constantly rewriting.
I mean, it's a lot of moving parts. So credit to you guys for trying to figure all that out. That's a lot. I always thought that Lucille steals the whole movie. I think she's like so phenomenal in that. Now, is that something that sort of happens? Do you think it's, well, okay, I've got another question. How much of this is ad lib? How much of it is, you know, the script? Is Lucille doing, just by acting the way she is, the actress, is she bringing even something more to the character? And is there ad libs that are being thrown in here and there?
Well, you directed her, Michael.
Yeah, I think there were, you know, we were pretty, you know, as young filmmakers, you know, we had a much more controlling hand.
That's cool.
I think, than I have, you know, as a more mature director.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember working with her, like on her voice. Like we had a very specific idea about how she would sound and what kind of whiny, you know, and her laugh, and like we worked with her, you know, probably too much. But you know, I remember we were always open to ad libs unless they, you know, interfered with it. I think anything that made us laugh went in.
Are there any ad libs that you remember that made it, or?
A lot of it was really all in the script. I remember that the guy who played Blade on the blue team, who never speaks, he kept begging us, just give me one line. I got to say something. It'll be great, like at the end. And we never did. So we gave him this one moment where he smiles at the end.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys are right on that one.
Yeah.
It made sense for that character. But I don't feel like he's lost in it. Again, like he's another character that's like in the forefront in a way. You know what I mean? Like you don't forget that Blade is there by any means. How about some of the things like coming up with the meat machine chant?
It's all in the script.
Yeah.
But those guys, the guys who played the jocks, they had the best chemistry. I think they just hung out together on and off camera, and it just totally clicked. You know, throwing 5 of them in that little Volkswagen.
Right. And okay, talk to me about the whole scene with the going to I'm not really drinking it, but I have a PBR. I have a PBR here. So how did that scene come to be that you were going to shoot at Pabst Blue Ribbon, and what did he really jump into and all that kind of stuff?
It was the second choice. We wanted to shoot at Budweiser, which was more well-known and had a even more well-known song, and they turned us down. They didn't like the idea of how we were going to portray it with someone jumping into the beer. And so we shot at Pabst Blue Ribbon. Have you ever been in a brewery? It's the worst smell.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah.
It's about 40 degrees. And Dirk Blocker had to, we had a stuntman. We created that vat. It was like a big wading pool. It wasn't really beer.
Darn.
And the stuntman jumps into it, which we got in one take, thank God. And then, but for all the moments after that, Dirk had to run around soaking wet in this 40-degree environment, and he was freezing.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah, it's cool that PBR. I mean, I don't know. Every time I drink a PBR, what about you guys? Do you drink a PBR and think of the movie?
I don't think I've ever had one.
I'm gonna start now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like they've had some problems like staying in existence, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
Midnight Madness maybe saved them. How about the scene? I think my favorite scene in the whole movie is the scene. I don't even know where your guys' brains are with this stuff, but like the piano scene where they're searching for the clue and they start playing chopsticks. Where does that come from, and what is that like to shoot?
Yeah, I mean, it came from, we knew that we wanted everyone on Harold's team to just annoy him and drive him crazy. And the relationship with Melio and Harold was that Melio would do anything he could to get at Harold. And I think Barf's character, I can't remember how we wrote it, but we came over what would be the stupidest thing you could do in a room full of pianos, and that would be playing Heart and Soul, the thing that everyone knows how to play on a piano. And I think we just that was another big shoot. I think all the players run in there at one point or another.
Yeah.
And it was just a way to explore the dynamic between Harold and his cohorts.
Totally. And Andy Tennant, I mean, super awesome in this. What's he like to work with? And have you seen do you see any of the cast members, in your worlds today?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, the ones that are working.
Andy was fun. He was very inventive. I remember there was a big chunk of the movie where he was sick. He was shooting nights with like 102 fever, and we would just like pat him down and roll the camera, and then he'd like pass out. And he also, I think he had a thing with either Candy or Sunshine or both of them. There was a lot of times where we had to try to find him, and they're off in the back lot, having fun.
Candy.
Oh boy, that's.
Candy is the reason why I started watching the movie. Like, I was like, where's this gonna go? But then I loved it where it went anyway. How about discovering Paul Rooms or Pee Wee Herman? How did he come into the mix?
We saw him at a comedy club called the Groundlings in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And he was already doing Pee Wee Herman.
But never had been on TV or movies.
Yeah, throwing candy at the audience and developing that character. We just thought we got to put that guy in our movie.
Totally. Is that the scene that Pee Wee Herman's in? Is that a set as well, or is that like a location where you guys are they're at the arcade or whatever? Are they? It
was a set.
Uh-huh. No, that was golf and stuff on Sepulveda Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley. There was the miniature golf course and the arcade.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Right?
I don't know. I remember we had to build part of it because we had to build those machines that shot balls. We had to build them so you could turn the gun around.
I think we built those and brought those in.
Did does the location freak out when you start taking all of their stuff and throwing it all over the place in the arcade?
They do until you write the check.
By the way, that scene with Paul Rubens where he's trying to stop the fight before it starts, that was a nod to West Side Story, where there's the rumble in the gym, and John Aston, who's like the recreation director at the gymnasium, tries to stop the two gangs from having a brawl, and we just lifted that completely.
That's awesome. Were there other options other than the yellow team winning, or was it always yellow team wins?
I think so. I think it was. I don't remember.
Bad guys can't win.
Had to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
It was, but the trick was how to, out of 12 hours of story time of all their adventures, with one team getting ahead, another team falling behind, how to have it come right down to the wire, right down to, after all that, it's got to come down to winning by 1 second.
Right.
And but we knew that the yellow team had to win.
Yeah, totally.
And the Harold has to get his comeuppance.
And how did you plot out that whole bit with the pool and all that stuff, like at the Bonaventure? What was that like to shoot? We touched about it a little bit, but that must have been a lot of people, a lot of things.
I think the plotting of it, I think we spent time there. We would just walk around and, there's glass elevators. Let's work for that. As a matter of fact, there's a photograph of us somewhere looking at, from the set, looking at the elevators, and one of us is doing that. We're talking about where the elevators should be in relation to each other. And
yeah, it was complicated.
Yeah.
I mean,
a big deal.
At that age and where you were in your careers, it must have been really challenging.
I think it was just that, being too young to be afraid, just going for it and relying on each other. I think it would have been a lot for either one of us at that stage to tackle.
Yeah.
Would either of you tackle something like this today?
Sure.
Huge cast.
Why not?
Have you guys ever come up with any continuing adventures of the Midnight Madness? Whether it be different cast, different thing, or a reboot or anything like that. Has that ever come across to you guys at all?
I'm still waiting. Every 10 years or so, I get contacted by somebody. In fact, just a couple, I don't think I even told you, Michael, because nothing came out of it, but this guy I was working with on a TV show, who's a super fan of the film, said, would I have your permission? Disney Plus wants me to come up with blah, blah, blah. Can I pitch it as a reboot? And I said, yeah, go for it.
Right, yeah.
But
I'm sure you guys would like to. Would you guys be open to revisiting that world?
Of course.
Yeah,
I would.
Yeah. And then so the movie comes out and it I don't know, it does okay in the theaters, but then it gets
we had what happened was that we were going to be the first at the time, the first PG Disney film.
Right, which is fascinating to me.
Breast jokes and that kind of stuff. And Disney sort of got cold feet at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was not a Disney film. It was released under their distribution arm, Buena Vista, but it's not a Disney film. They thought, there were a lot of discussions that happened without us, and I guess they got worried about tarnishing the Disney brand,
right?
With off-color humor and body jokes and people looking at girls undressing and.
What was Disney like in general to work with? Was there anything that they were like, guys, you can't do this? We're Disney.
It was very old school, very closed shop. As Michael said, we had two other partners that weren't involved in this film, but that had come in with us from our student film. And one of them's a woman, and there was literally a restaurant where women weren't allowed to go into on the Disney lot. It was like a boys club. And, but on the other hand, the good thing was it wasn't run by 100 accountants and corporate executives. There was one guy, Disney's son-in-law, Ron Miller, who made those decisions, and he went with his gut instincts, and he was able to just give us the green light.
So but they weren't coming up with like a ton of notes for you about like the the melons and all this kind of the breast stuff and all this stuff. Are they saying like?
No, at first they were just like, go for it. They were giddy because they thought, finally, we're going to have our Animal House,
right? Expand
our audience. We're going to have teenagers coming to Disney films. It's going to be great. That's kind of why they hired us in the first place.
Sure.
Not that we were the only people that could do something like that, but we just happened to be standing there at the right moment.
Totally.
But I think they got a little cold feet at the end there. So it wasn't released with a lot of fanfare, although. Being 23 years old and going and seeing your feature at the Chinese theater is quite a thing.
Yeah. But it does get this other kind of crazy life because of HBO down the line, right? Is that sort of what happened?
Yeah, there's an entire generation, probably people exactly your age,
my age,
who were like 13 in the whatever summer everybody signed up for HBO, and HBO bought the film and ran it 100 times a week, and everybody memorized every line of the film, and it became kind of a cult classic that way. So
was that weird for you guys though? Because it's like, we did that movie, at 6-7 years ago, and now it's sort of getting this other life where people are probably talking to you about it and asking you about it, like it just came out,
Yeah, it was just, it was unfortunate that it was later. It would have been nice if it had been when the movie came out in the theaters.
Yeah, totally. What about for you, Michael?
Same answer. It's funny because I was aware that it was running on HBO, but I wasn't aware of how many times it was running and the impact it was having. It wasn't until later when I started, much later, I would start going when the generation that watched it as kids started becoming like, TV and movie executives, and I'd walk into a meeting and out of the blue they'd go, "Oh my God, you did Midnight Madness."
Yeah. Same here. And then I got to be used to it. Like, I know, okay, I'm like, 46 years old at the time, and I'm going to, and I see all this executives 33, and I know what's coming. They all like, I would give posters away to the people that love the film.
Well, I think this year is the 40th anniversary of the film, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
What do you guys take 40 years later? You've had a lot of experience since then as creative types in this industry. What is your thoughts on the movie now, looking back on it?
Wow, I don't think I've seen it in 20 years. I never watch my own work.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah.
Ever. I can't stand watching my own work because all I can see are the flaws.
Right, I hear that.
It just depresses me. So, I haven't, I'm basically a very forward-looking person. So, other than like something like this popping into my life where I get to talk about it and someone's telling me I'm a genius, it doesn't.
You are. Yeah.
In the past.
So if you saw it on TV, you wouldn't watch?
No, I know all the shots.
You got it.
Actually, it's a curse. Not only do I know all the shots, but I know what I wanted them all to be that they're not.
I got you. Okay.
I didn't have time, or it didn't come out quite as well, and so, it's funny, that part of it's fresh.
Right.
The like, what I wanted to do and what could have been.
Is there anything specific?
It's torturous. It's horrible. I never watch my own stuff.
Is there anything specific in that movie that you wanted that you just was like, fine, it's fine the way it is now?
I'd have to watch it again to
yeah.
that question. But actually, there's one thing I want to talk about, which you don't know about. Because we had, they wanted to surround us with older people. They wanted to surround these young kids with experience. We had this, not only did we have this sort of like new actors and forward-looking part of the movie experience, but we had this like deep Hollywood history.
I meant to ask you about that. I missed it. Yeah, I missed it. It's been in my head. Like I have a question that I want to know, and that's literally the question.
Like our script supervisor was also around 70 years old, and her name was Meta Carpenter.
Uh-huh.
And she, she had done like Humphrey Bogart movies, and was Mike Nichols' script supervisor on Virginia Woolf. And I mean, she was on every great movie ever. And she was with us every day, sitting there making comments and, giving us confidence and
right.
telling stories about the old days.
Even in the movie, there in Leon's apartment, there's all those sort of old big characters that come in.
We had John Fiedler,
right,
and
Marvin Kaplan,
and
Kaplan.
Actually, we in the rehearsal stage early on in the casting stages, the casting director at Disney brought in. Now I'm having a senior moment. Joan Blondell to be the landlady.
Right.
So Joan Blondell, who was started movies with James Cagney, and was the Queen of Warner Brothers, and has been in everything. We fired her.
Right. Okay.
Well, one of the great regrets of my life that I didn't know enough to know that I was talking to Joan Blondell and who she was, really.
Well, and, I'm glad she was fired, because she was replaced by Irene Tedrow, who played the landlady from, and she was from Dennis the Menace, who's one of the great character actors.
So great, yeah.
But I don't remember firing her. I remember going to Ron. We were in rehearsals.
Yeah.
And she was getting $10,000 or something, and she really did not want to be in the film.
Right.
It was this is my memory. Maybe you remember it differently. And she would fight us with everything we wanted to do. And I remember going to Ron Miller and saying, "How is it going?" Well, Joan Blondell is really difficult. And we explained, and he said, "She's gone."
I also remember she couldn't go up and down stairs, and we had that set. She had to burst through the door and go down 3 steps.
A lot of
she couldn't physically do it.
And Irene Tedrow had to dial a phone number with her nose, and it took about 8 takes, and she was a trooper.
I mean, it's interesting, the 3 different sort of worlds of the movie, with all the different, the characters and the soft stuff with the yellow team and all that. That's one story, and then the game itself is another story. And then what's going on in Leon's apartment is another story. So there's so many different facets going on all at one time in the movie. I think that's one of the things that gives it that, I don't know, that connective tissue maybe, right?
Definitely, and they all have to intersect.
Yeah.
I mean, I think looking back, I would cut the movie down. I think it was too long, but I don't know exactly what I would cut out. But I see the flaws also. If I look at it, it's that shot the pace here or this or that. But I think for teenagers, who maybe hadn't seen It's a Mad, Mad World, they were a little too young to know that. It is a big spectacle film with all sorts of crazy humor and an interesting play-along story. So I could see why especially kids would go for it.
How about you, David? Do you watch it if it's on, or when was the last time you've seen it?
Well, I think about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, Disney contacted us they mastered it in high definition. Mm-hmm. And they were going through all their vaults of all their films, and they were contacting the directors to see if we wanted to supervise the color correction, because I think I guess they'll show it on Disney Plus or something. So we had the occasion. I don't know if you were there for part of it, maybe, Michael, but maybe you couldn't. But and that was fun because we got to go back and actually help some of the things that needed it. There's so much more you can do now with computers with the lighting. And there's actually, for example, there was a scene where they're in the observatory, and I can't remember which team is looking through the telescope, and they see another team charging up the steps, and they're coming into the observatory through the telescope. And the matte shot that we had done was very primitive, and it was too dark to really see the team in the telescope. And we were able to lighten it up and make it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it was fun.
There's a little bit of a technology story in this, is that Disney back then, because of their animation experience, is that every film shot at Disney, they made a Technicolor master.
Interesting.
Which is called a YCM for the three colors that make up Technicolor,
sure.
yellow, cyan, and magenta. And so what they do is they divide the colors up into three spectrums, and they make a black and white negative of each, color.
Right.
Which means, and black and white film lasts forever, whereas color prints fade. So Midnight Madness, along with like all the Disney films of that time, are archived forever because of these Technicolor masters that they made.
That's pretty cool, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
They also made us shoot it in a weird aspect ratio for your listeners who are into that kind of stuff. Most films at the time were shot in 1.85 width, and TV was 1.33 when TV was more square. And they decided, they were the only studio that shot it as a kind of a compromise ratio, 1.75, which meant on TV it wouldn't be quite right, and in the movie theater it wouldn't be quite right. But we were able to fix some of that framing also when we did the HD pass.
I wonder why they did that. Do you have any reasoning behind that, or not really?
I think it was just because they figured they're going to show their films on TV at some point, and they'll play better on TV if it's framed a little bit more like TV than for a movie.
You mentioned the observatory scene, and that gets a little bit risque. The little kid looking up in the at the girl in the window and all that. What was that like to shoot?
Remember that?
I think you have a story.
It must have gone around the studio a lot like the biggest news that came to Disney in 50 years. They're going to do a nude scene on stage 3 Thursday at 3:00. And normally we'd have like 25 people on the crew, and it seemed like every single person at Disney in any connected to any department had to be on the set that day to make sure everything went just right. It was quite a spectacle.
That's pretty funny. Cool, guys. So anyway, what do you want fans to know about this movie now, all these years later, if they're listening to this thing? What do you want to say to fans and about the experience and about the movie, both of you?
Well, it was it was this like turning point in our lives, started our career. But it was like a love letter to Los Angeles and to like all the comedies and movies that we had loved as film students and even before that. And I think it was in a way also like a love letter to each other, celebrating our humor, our friendship, and all our old jokes that we shared.
Totally. And for you, David?
Yeah, and I'm grateful that people have discovered it or rediscovered it over the years. Obviously, there's something to it that really strikes a chord. It's a kind of an old-fashioned, funny movie that you don't get to see every day. So there's still things that, as much as I can be critical of things in the film, there's still things that make me laugh out loud. I mean,
that's good to hear.
Yeah, so that's that I'm glad it lasts.
And what about the two of you guys? Have you guys worked on things together since, or have you guys kind of do your own thing, or what's that like?
Yeah, we did our own thing. You kind of like we started getting interested in sort of different stuff.
Of course,
we would come back together a little bit over the years, but I think we're just sort of admiring each other's careers from afar now, and
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely we were joined at the hip for about 10 years.
Right.
And I think we needed each other a lot then, and kind of gave each other the confidence to be able to do our own thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if one day we collaborate on something again.
I hope so. You're geniuses.
Noon madness.
Noon sanity.
Well, guys, thank you so much, not only for doing this podcast, but like I said at the top of this, my sister and I have so many memories from this movie, and we quote it all the time. People think we're crazy that don't know what it is. But you guys created something that has lasted inside of just my little family. So much appreciation for the humor and the work that you guys put out there. And, thanks so much for doing this too.
Thank you so much. Glad we could be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yeah.